Human history is full of conflict. Wars, rebellions, invasions, revolts, civil wars, religious wars, wars over resources, wars over ideology, and good old-fashioned police actions. Especially in Europe, and few countries have fought more wars in one form or another than France and Germany. It starts before they were even technically countries, going back to the conflicts between Germanic tribes and the Gauls around 40 BCE. In more recent history, they fought over a particular slice of land for about 400 years, starting at the tail end of one of Europe's largest wars, the 30 Years' War. See, the 30 Years' War was this massive conflict back in the 1600s. It started with the Holy Roman Empire, which was basically this set of loosely connected small, mostly Germanic nation-states and principalities that the Pope looked at and said, "Hey guys, you're the successor to the Roman Empire because I said so." Basically, the Holy Roman Emperor decided to try and force everyone in his empire to be Catholic. The thing is, the Protestants in the empire didn't like that very much, so a bunch of them decided to band together and revolt. The whole thing was pretty simple at first, but eventually a bunch of other kingdoms and empires got involved, and the whole thing spiraled out to this huge, devastating Europe-wide war. Eventually, after 3 decades of fighting, the whole thing was ended by a series of treaties referred to collectively as the Peace of Westphalia. The kingdoms and empires involved lost bits of territory and gained other bits. A couple places actually managed to gain independence from larger European powers like the Netherlands, but most of that isn't really important right now. What is important is that France took 2 little slices of territory from the Holy Roman Empire called Alsace and Lorraine, and that the war crippled the Holy Roman Empire and later caused it to fall apart completely, leaving a bunch of smaller kingdoms, most of which didn't last very long. Only 2 of them are particularly important to this whole thing: Austria and Prussia. Prussia would later get so big and influential that it changed its name to Germany and absorbed a few of its smaller neighbors. Now both Prussia and Austria figured that Alsace and Lorraine were theirs and tried to take it back from France a bunch of times over the next 400 years. Like during the Napoleonic Wars, Austria tried and failed miserably to take it back a bunch of times. And later, the Prussians actually successfully took Alsace-Lorraine from France during the Franco-Prussian War, which is basically this brief war between Prussia and France where the Prussians provoked France into a war and then kicked their butts. It ended French supremacy on the continent and resulted in Prussia uniting with several other Germanic states and forming Germany. Now that was all well and good, except that France was kind of peeved they'd been beaten so bad there was bound to be another war. Since a few other countries were starting to get scared of Germany, they created this alliance called the Entente. Germany was also busy making its own big web of alliances. Now, you have these 2 big nations that really don't like each other, and they both have a bunch of friends who also don't like each other. And Europe is basically this big powder keg, and everyone is waving matches. Once lit, the whole thing blew up into another Europe-wide war like the 30 Years' War. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria was shot by this Serbian terrorist, and Austria declared war on Serbia, and bang, before anyone really even knows it, all of Europe is at war. And back over in Alsace-Lorraine, guess who's fighting again? That's right, it's Germany and France fighting over the same bit of territory yet again. After 4 years of the most horrifying and bloody war the world had ever seen, it's over. France has won and takes back Alsace-Lorraine. And maybe, just maybe, that'll be it. Maybe these 2 crazy kids have finally learned to play nice and work out their differences without a massive amount of death. Psych, it's not even 10 years later, and here comes Hitler and his merry band of goose-stepping morons. Boy, they sure are angry about, like, a lot of stuff. A lot of really dumb, really racist stuff. And one of the many, many things they're mad about is their rightful territory. Like this place called Danzig, which is a whole other story. And of course Alsace-Lorraine. So they used them as excuses to invade Poland and France and set Europe on fire again. But thankfully, after another 6 years of even more horrific violence, the war is over. France once again housed Alsace-Lorraine, the Allies beat the Nazi out of Germany, and America stepped in and forced everyone to make nice so the endless chain of wars would stop. And there you have it. Germany and France fighting for 400 years, and it all comes down to this little piece of land France took from a long-dead empire at the end of the 30 Years' War. But hey, on the bright side, they're pretty good friends now. And all it took for them to put aside their differences was 400 years and countless of millions of dead young men and civilians. At least we got zippers out of it. And daylight savings time.